the entire playbook for how America deals with the world and its own economy was about to get a complete rewrite. That's what we're digging into today. We're looking at a brand new blueprint for the country's future, and it's all drawn from two really important policy documents that could change, well, pretty much everything.
All right, so what's the problem this whole new blueprint is even trying to fix? Well, according to this new national security strategy, American foreign policy has kind of been lost at sea. The document basically says it's turned into a laundry list of wishes. Just a bunch of scattered goals with no real focus, no single purpose driving it all. And that critique, that's what kicks off this huge proposed shift.
So the solution isn't to treat foreign policy over here and the economy way over there. Nope. The idea is to weave them together. It's all part of one big philosophy. You can't be strong out in the world if you're not strong at home. And it works the other way too. They're really seen as two sides of the exact same coin.
And the glue holding all of this together, it's this principle of America first. Now, the documents are really clear. They're not talking about a political slogan. They see it as a practical, everyday filter for every single decision. The big question they're asking is, does this actually work for the American people? So whether we're talking about a massive trade deal or a tiny banking rule, that right there is the new bottom line.
Okay, so how does this America First filter actually change things on the world stage? The national security strategy is calling for a really big course correction. It basically argues that for decades, the US has been trying to be everything to everyone, a mission it calls permanent American domination. The new plan is to kind of pull back from that and get way more focused. And this slide, it just lays out the before and after perfectly. On one side, you have the old way of doing things, criticized for having these messy goals and a kind of globalism that, according to the document, gutted American industry while letting our allies kind of freeload. The fix they're proposing? It's a laser focus on what's good for America, building up strength at home, and really importantly, telling allies, hey, you got a foreign policy actually built on. You can really think of it as a shift from idealism to just raw realism. The core ideas are pretty straightforward. First, a strong economy and a strong military are your best defense. Second, stay out of other countries' fights unless it's absolutely critical. And maybe the biggest one of all, every single policy decision has to answer one key question. How does this help the American worker? And here's a perfect, concrete example of that burden-sharing idea in action. The strategy is putting forward something called the Hague Commitment. And what is it? It's a new standard for our NATO allies. Spend 5% of your GDP on your own defense. Now that is a huge jump, and the whole point is to shift the main responsibility for Europe's security back to, well, the Europeans. But a strong foreign policy, it's got to have a solid foundation right here at home. And that brings us to the second key document we're looking at, the one that really gets into the economic side of things. It goes so far as to redefine what financial stability even means, arguing that you just can't be secure out in the world if your economy isn't secure. Right, so let's talk about the Financial Stability Oversight Council, or FSOC for short. This is the group of top regulators. Their whole job is to spot risks in the US financial system. And their brand new report shows exactly how that America First philosophy gets translated into actual dollars and cents. And here is the big shift. For years, financial stability basically meant one thing, preventing another crash like we saw in 2008. But this new definition says, nope, that's not enough. Real stability, it argues, means making sure you have long-term economic growth. It's like, instead of just fireproofing a building, the new goal is to make sure that building is a booming place to do business. So from now on, every single regulation has to be judged by that standard. Does it help or hurt growth? And to back this up, the report points to something huge, the ballooning US national debt. We're talking nearly $30 trillion. All of that debt gets traded in what's called the Treasury market, which is basically the foundation of the entire global financial system. And here's the argument. Some of the very rules that were put in place after the 2008 crisis might actually be making it harder for this massive market to work smoothly. And that, ironically, could be creating whole new risks. So what's the proposed solution? It's to go back and take a hard look at those rules. The goal is to clear out any regulations that might be gumming up the works, acting like a clog in the financial pipes, and making it tough for banks to keep that all-important treasury market running smoothly. It's a very direct move to put economic energy and financial health first, ahead of what they see as rigid or outdated rules. Okay, so that's the theory. But what does this blueprint look like when the rubber meets the road? Let's break down how these big ideas actually translate into specific policies, from right here in our own backyard to the other side of the planet.
All right, first up, let's look at the Western Hemisphere. The strategy literally calls for dusting off the Monroe Doctrine. I mean, this is a policy that's almost 200 years old, and it basically tells foreign powers, hey, stay out of our neighborhood. The goal is to push back hard against competitors from outside the hemisphere and really re-establish the US as the #1 player in the region.
And this updated take is being called the Trump corollary. So what does that mean in practice? It means actively trying to be the partner of choice for countries in Latin America on everything from trade deals to security. The idea is to pretty much block out any rivals who are trying to get a foothold. Now, let's jump over to Asia. The strategy here pivots away from a mainly military focus to an intense economic competition. So what does that look like? It means tackling what they call unfair trade deals, cracking down hard on intellectual property theft, and getting allies to team up and form a united front against any country using its economic muscle in a predatory way. Back home, in the US banking system, the blueprint tells financial regulators to get back to basics. The message is clear: focus on one thing, the financial health of the banks, their safety and soundness, and stop what the documents call mission drift. That means pulling back from issues like, say, climate risk, which are framed here as being outside the core job of just making sure the financial system doesn't collapse. And when it comes to the US borders, the language is incredibly blunt. The strategy declares, and I'm quoting here, the era of mass migration is over. It frames controlling the border as a top-tier national security issue, one that's essential to stop what it calls these destabilizing flows of people. And finally, there's technology. This is really the thread that runs through everything. Both of these documents put a huge emphasis on the race to lead in artificial intelligence. They see it as absolutely critical, both for keeping a military advantage overseas and for defending our financial system from cyber threats right here at home.
So, let's step back. When you put all these pieces together, from how we deal with allies to how we regulate our own banks, what's the big picture here? What's the main takeaway from this whole new vision?
At the end of the day, this blueprint is really sketching out a much more self-reliant America. The core belief is that a nation's strength doesn't start at its borders, it starts in its factories, in its banks, and in its communities. The path to having peace and stability out in the world, according to this view, runs right through building a stronger, more prosperous, and more independent America right here at home.
And that leaves us with one last big question. This whole blueprint is clearly a response to the way things have been done for the last few decades. But as it tries to fix old problems, what new ones might it create? A strategic shift this big always has trade-offs, and you can be sure the entire world will be watching to see exactly what those trade-offs turn out to be.
Yes, indeed. America has quietly walked off the stage, and it's these two documents here that are just completely making everybody lose their minds. And so within these documents, the America First ideology is articulated, but what's also articulated is the term financial stability. What does that mean? We heard that forever once the 2008 market collapsed and then the Dodd-Frank Act came into being. And so everybody's talking about financial stability. Well, the Trump administration defines financial stability as just rock solid financials as far as the home goes, as far as jobs go, as far as oil pricing goes. That's what the Trump administration considers financial stability, not if banks are going to go belly up or not. The whole too big to fail thing that we were led to believe was something of value, that's being put to rest in this new administration. So we're doing a deep dive. We're calling it gravity shifts. And we are in Act 4, but Act number 1, right? We talked about how America quietly walks off the stage. We just showed a video that details this event. Act 2 was why Ukraine changed Europe forever. The Ukraine war acted as a stress test, and it really sort of broke open all of the fissures and the alliances with NATO, with America, with the EU member states. So the Ukraine war is extremely important as far as it's much more than a conflict. It is helping define where Europe is strong and where Europe is weak. And the third act was the real risk to Europe isn't Russia, it's math, the demographics, and the paradox of migration, right? So birth rates are falling within Europe. Migration is a hot topic. People around the world are kind of pushing back from this non-stop migration of other cultures into their Western world. But if you remove that migration, the numbers, the population statistics and numbers just crater. It's like a 75% swing between a country that is dramatically losing population and a country that's dramatically just had a little hiccup. Let me check the things seem to be okay. All right, so we're going to move on to act number 1. Act number 4. History doesn't repeat, but systems do. All right, so before World War I, and the documents that I am presenting to reference here, they make a really awesome, they create a really great framework for looking at World War I and World War II. They don't make a distinction. They're kind of saying it's the second 30 Years' War. I thought that was a fantastic way of framing World War I and World War II. But anyways, history doesn't repeat, but systems do repeat. Before World War I, Europe was deeply integrated. Trade was booming. The Industrial Revolution just kind of brought everybody together. Capital flowed freely. Many leaders believed prosperity had made major conflicts obsolete. They were wrong. Integration masked political fragmentation and structural risk until stress exposed the fragility. And that is exactly what we're running into today. So history doesn't repeat, but systems often behave in familiar ways. When confidence outpaces resilience, risk doesn't disappear. It accumulates quietly. All right. And that was, yeah. So when people hear historical comparisons, they often assume you're predicting a catastrophe. That's not what this is. This is pattern recognition, how complex systems behave when confidence outpaces structural reality. So, so as we just mentioned, Europe was highly integrated before World War One. Western economies were deeply integrated through trade, capital flows, and this international interdependence failed to prevent major pre-war pre-war World War One, right? International interdependence failed to prevent major war in pre-World War One Europe, even among highly integrated states, and we can see that referenced in great detail here. Scholars who study pre-1914 Europe show that even heavy economic integration did not prevent conflict. Trade links didn't stop war when underlying political tensions reached a breaking point. And what's so important here is to understand that World War One started in the Balkans. All right, and Yugoslavia and the Baltic states were the least integrated into the market interconnectivity that defined Europe pre-World War One. So the long peace and false confidence, which was before systematic disruption, and we can see all of these themes happening again, man. Historical observers have noted that Europe experienced deep economic growth and interdependence before 1914, and that made the eventual outbreak of war seem unexpected, despite underlying structural tensions. Where are we? Yeah. Okay. And so we're going to reference this article here, European Economic Integration Undoing the 30 Years War. I love it. Leading economic historians point out that Europe's pre-war 1914 growth and trade integration gave a false sense of permanent stability, masking the structural political tensions that eventually exploded. And we see that, right? Just imagine before the Ukraine war, you would never see these political fissures that you see now, right? Everybody was just one big happy camper, and now with the war grinding on and grinding on, we see Hungary and Poland and Italy not very happy. We see America pulling out, say, okay, it's just you, France and Germany, you know. Spain doesn't seem all that excited about the Ukrainian war. And so, once again, we're seeing these parallels, like before 1914 and before the Ukrainian war. We didn't see these fissures in the foundation. So, yes, leading economic historians point out that Europe's pre-1914 growth and trade integration gave a false sense of permanent stability, masking political tensions that eventually exploded. And then the last article we're going to cite, it's not really, well, it's a book, actually. John Maynard Keynes in The Economic Consequences of Peace, argued that pre-war economic and political assumptions about stability were built on sandy and false foundations, showing that elites misread systematic risk. When you wrap immigration in the wrapper of racism, right, and xenophobia, intellectually, from a morality stance, or however you want to put it, and in an intellectual discussion, it's one thing. But when you have a nation that's based on Christianity, and you have an entire different set of, like Sharia law. What is that? And the mosques, right, with the calling, they do that call 6 times a day. And so that's, we're used to church bells, man. And so once those cultural sticking points actually show up in everybody's daily lives, it's a different discussion. All right, so that's what the Ukraine war, along with this just tidal wave of migration, has done. It shows that Europe is on much more sandy and false foundations than it appeared pre-Ukraine and pre the effects of this just relentless migration. So Keynes' critique of pre-war economic assumptions and political confidence in stability is right here in his book, The Economic Consequences of the Peace. Keynes wrote that Europe's habitually treated temporary advantages as permanent, right? Just like Germany, the temporary advantage of cheap Russian oil, they saw that as a permanent. The temporary advantage of America always, they're footing the bill. NATO saw this temporary advantage as permanent, right? And what happens, you build policy on shaky assumptions. Say that 3 times. Shaky assumptions. It's a lesson about overconfidence in system stability. In the years before 1914, Western Europe was so economically integrated that many believed war was impossible. But historians show that even dense trade and capital links didn't prevent the system collapsing under political strain, and that's a documented puzzle, not a theory. Modern economic integration before 1914 masked political fractures just like today. European countries thought prosperity made conflict impossible. It only delayed the reckoning. And here's just one line putting it all together. Keynes warned in The Economic Consequences of the Peace that elites treat temporary advantage as permanent. Building strategy and sanding foundations, that's a useful lens for understanding how apparent stability can hide fragility. So, like we said at the beginning of the broadcast, history doesn't repeat itself, but systems sometimes do. If you build a house on a sandy foundation, it may look good at first, but it's destined to fail. All right. I thought that was going to take longer than it did. We got through it. Thanks so much for watching. And so we're going to wrap it all up in the next act coming, Act 5. There might be an Act 6 to sort of make a proposition on where the power structures are going to gravitate to, what's going to be the path of least resistance, where's the infrastructure that's going to lay the foundation for the new future of Europe. And that'll be it for our series, Gravity Shifts. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Au revoir.